Welcome to the city. I'm Anthony Wilson, the Public Information Officer for the City of San Angelo. And joining us today for the full episode is our City Manager, Daniel Valenzuela. Daniel, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Well, I wanted to talk about the recent strategic planning session that you conducted with our City Council member. This is an effort that you do every year, and there were some readjustments, if you will, in the priorities. The City Council still has the same 5 priorities, but they did a little bit of readjusting. But let's talk first about the number 1 priority, which is water. What can you tell us about the development of more water supply for the City of San Angelo?
Well, we're consistently looking for a new water supply. That hasn't ended. I know that later on we'll talk a little bit more about the West Texas Water Partnership and what that means to us, but we consistently are looking outside of not just our area, but we know that it's going to be a regional approach to bringing more water to the city. To explore new water sources is quite an expensive venture, and it's not one really that the City of San Angelo should be taking on alone when you have other partners that are interested in sharing that cost, and they also have similar needs. So we continue that search for water. Right now, of course, we know that we've secured some water that's coming in at this point, through the Hickory Aquifer, and we're looking at other projects at this point, which includes the water reuse project and possibly the Red Arroyo project as well. And again, we're just constantly looking. We know that without water, this community really does dry up, and it really goes away. We want to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to bring enough good quality water to San Angelo, and we'll continue that process of seeking that out.
You mentioned the direct reuse of treated wastewater. What are your thoughts on that, the potential of that project?
I think that at this point, there's been a lot that's been said about water reuse. Is it safe? Do we have issues in the future if we go to water reuse? There's been a lot of studies that have been done. As a matter of fact, that's an issue that's being tackled right now by the Water Advisory Board, along with our Water Utilities Director, and Bill Riley, and Ricky Dixon, our Public Works Director. We do definitely want to make sure that we take a look at those water sources that are available to the city, and quite frankly, water reuse is a readily available source. I do think that it'd be remiss of us if we just ignored the fact that we have 7 to 9 million gallons of water that we can actually bring back drinkability standards. So that's definitely something that we want to consider. It should be a definite option for the city as well. As I said a while ago, we'll make sure that as we move forward, that this is a safe option for the city.
You mentioned Bill Riley, our Water Utilities Director. One of the things that he said about that project is it's a guaranteed source of water. You know you're going to have it. It doesn't rely upon water falling from the sky, and it diversifies our water portfolio. So we have surface water, we have water from an aquifer from the Hickory, and then we would have this. Do those arguments or those points sort of make sense in your mind?
They make a lot of sense. Diversification is very important to us. If we're dependent on just one water source, like we had been in the past as far as the lake water or surface water, of course we know that we receive fewer and fewer rain showers. The drought has been persistent throughout the state. Some of the state receives some water, but here locally or in West Texas, central West Texas, we haven't. So that's still a major issue, a major concern for us. So yes, we want to diversify. We want to make sure that we don't just have that surface water, but we're looking at, again, groundwater with the Hickory, as I mentioned a while ago. But again, water reuse is another nice form of diversification.
Like you mentioned, we had abundant rainfall this past year, but it didn't really replenish our reservoirs. We right now have about an estimated 25, 26 months of water supply. When do you anticipate a decision on whether or not we're going to proceed with direct potable reuse?
We take a look at that. Again, as I mentioned a while ago, we just want to make sure that the studies, that we're comfortable with the studies, the scientific studies to determine that, at this point, my personal opinion, that it is safe. It is definitely a safe drinking supply, but I don't just want to give you my opinion on that. I want to make absolutely sure that we have studied it, and scientifically we can come to this community and say, look, here are the reports. We do know that it is safe. So it's something that, quite frankly, when you look at 24, 25, 26 months of water supply, it's scary for us. We want to make sure that we do have that option, that plan B in place, and this would be a great one to have in place at this point. I am hoping that within the next 45 days, 30 to 45 days, once the study is completed, for example, for the Red Arroyo, that we'll have a determination whether that's a viable option for us as well. So we may have a couple of viable options, but at this point, we want to diversify, and we definitely want to consider water reuse.
You mentioned the Red Arroyo, and I wanted to talk about that, the possibility of recapturing some of the stormwater that flows through that. How much more do we need to know about whether or not that's a feasible effort?
You know, the study itself will determine. We need to determine how much water can be held in that basin to include even the liner that would be required to keep the water there as well. The study is nearing its conclusion at this point. It is something that's going to be presented to the Water Advisory Board at its next meeting this month, actually. So it's something that I'm looking forward to hearing the final report on. Again, we definitely would love to know that perhaps there is another option for us, and we want to, hopefully it'll be the Red Arroyo as well. Sometimes people think that there are competing projects, the Red Arroyo and water reuse. I think if Red Arroyo is a viable option for us, we need to actually consider both of them.
You mentioned earlier the West Texas Water Partnership, which is a joint venture between us and the cities of Abilene and Midland to develop a regional water supply. And you haven't been able to talk all that much about it because what you've been exploring has been sort of proprietary in nature. What can you tell us about the West Texas Water Partnership effort and any progress that it has yielded to date?
I can tell you at this point that there's two different areas that we're looking at for that water supply. We have to be really careful, of course. One of the things that we've always said as a partnership as we go into those areas and talk to the leadership in those areas is that we're not water raiders. Well, we're actually looking for a viable option for our constituents, our citizens, and we also understand that they have to protect their citizens as well. So when we go in there, we want to make sure that we address, when we talk to the leadership in those areas, we want to leave our options available from the areas that we may end up having to negotiate a contract for those water rights to bring the water in. So we're careful not to give away too much information. It gives us a stronger platform, a stronger base to negotiate those deals in the future. So we're trying to make sure that we're careful in how much information goes out. We also don't want to offend or upset people in certain areas, and we want to make sure that the news goes out in those areas ahead of somebody jumping on the story and maybe spreading some information after that's not actually non-factual. So again, we just want to make sure we're careful what information goes out.
And I would assume it's important that you not tip your hand to other communities that may also be looking for water and say, look at what the city of San Angelo is looking at. We should maybe go and explore that. And then you're competing with someone for that water.
And that's an excellent point, Anthony. Again, when there's more competition, you know that the deals go up in price, and we definitely want to maintain the lowest possible water for our citizens. I know the three communities want to make sure that we do that. So that's a valuable point, absolutely.
And of course, you've explored a lot of options. I assume there's also value in being able to sort of check some of that stuff off the list. You explore it and find out it's not really feasible, and then you can sort of move on from there.
And we've done that multiple times, actually. Again, as I mentioned a while ago, the two areas that we're looking at right now are actually viable sources. Others that we've studied and looked at weren't. So we did scratch those off the list. So we're pursuing these other two as possible options.
The council is also interested in improving our water infrastructure. How do you plan on going about doing that, replacing some of the aging water mains that we have in our community?
Our water mains, as far as the water the infrastructure that's being replaced, as a matter of fact, there's a topic on City Council tomorrow that addresses water infrastructure to determine when certain infrastructure should be pulled out of the ground and you going in. I will tell you this, of course, as we do our street reconstruction work, we will be going in there and replacing a lot of those water lines. We want to make, or infrastructure, we want to make absolutely sure that we're not putting in new streets and later on we're having to tear them up because the old water lines underneath burst. So again, that's a huge priority. So it's going to be a twofold effort. Part of it is monies that are budgeted to replace some of that infrastructure, but a lot of it's going to be going into the street repair. Once that street work or reconstruction is being done, we are going to be replacing a lot of those lines.
You referenced the water plan that the City Council is going to be considering tomorrow. It seems to me that's going to sort of do for our water infrastructure what the recent street plan did for our streets and sort of prioritizing what the needs are and how to systematically address it.
That is correct, Anthony. Again, you look at the aging infrastructure, but you also look at areas where maybe perhaps water pressure is too low. What's causing that? What do we need to do infrastructure-wise to make sure that we replace it with infrastructure that will increase the pressure in those areas? So again, there's a lot that we'll be looking at. It is an important study, and again, as I mentioned, we'll be presenting tomorrow, and we'll see how that goes.
if water is 1A, then the next priority would be 1B, and that would be streets. And of course, this year, we're going to see the start of the reconstruction of MLK Boulevard and Bell Street. For those who are unaware of the $80 million commitment the city council has made towards improving streets, talk about what people are going to see over the next 10 years.
You know, first of all, it's $80 million, and that's for the reconstruction. It's for it's not the seal coat and overlay, which is your maintenance project, but it is the reconstruction of those streets. We also have a mill and overlay that goes along with the reconstruction. So the 80 million will go toward the reconstruction, but what the city is also doing, and I want to talk about on that point as well, is that we are setting aside about $4 million, and our goal is to set this money aside every year, $4 million. And that is to do the seal coat and overlay, basically the emulsion, you seal the cracks of the streets to make sure water doesn't seep into the streets and destroys the base, which is where you get a lot of the potholes. So we'll be sealing those cracks, placing emulsion over that, and of course the rock chip to seal the coastal streets and protect them from water. So these are monies that will be set aside on a yearly basis to do just the maintenance work on the streets, and we want to make sure that we tackle those streets over an 8-year period. Now the $80 million for a complete reconstruction, and also the mill and overlay. That in itself, what you'll start seeing within the city is, of course, people don't like to be inconvenienced when we have street workers out there and they're blocking off streets and they're working on certain streets. But you'll see a lot of that. Our goal, of course, is to get everything done over no more than a 10-year period to get the reconstruction started. And then we definitely want to make sure that once those streets are reconstructed, we place them on a maintenance schedule so that we can have more of a pay-as-you-go system in the future, that we set aside the money, and what we're doing is maintaining those streets as we go along, rather than having it completely reconstructed.
You know, one of the remarkable things, at least in my mind, about that $80 million effort is it's not going to increase property taxes, the issuance of those bonds. Talk about how you were able to do that.
You know, we look at our debt capacity and our debt service. We want to make sure that we time, whenever we look at issuing more debt, or in this case, certificates of obligation, we look at our debt service and make sure that as we're issuing that debt, other debt is being paid off as well. So there's a balance there. So when we look at it, we want to be as responsible as we possibly can. We want to make sure that we maintain a good credit rating, which we do with the city currently. And all that is a bit of a balancing act, but again, it's a responsible thing to do fiscally, to look at your debt service to see in what areas will be paid off, and can we bring on more debt? And if we do bring on more debt, what does this mean for the citizens as it pertains to property taxes? One of our goals is to do all this work without increasing our property taxes, and that's still going to be one of our goals. These past couple of years, we have not increased. As a matter of fact, over the last 10 years, the property tax has gone down steadily.
We're talking with our city manager, Daniel Valenzuela, and we'll continue this conversation right after this. A pilot program at San Angelo's water treatment plant could result in the addition of 7 million gallons of guaranteed water each day. The Water Utilities Department has launched a miniature representation of an advanced treatment facility that returns wastewater to drinking standards. The aim is to establish the parameters for designing a full-scale facility. Should the City Council pursue the direct potable reuse of effluent water, the pilot program would also meet a state requirement to secure necessary permits.
They want to see that you actually can accomplish what you say you can, and they want to see that you're actually removing any harmful constituents out of the water.
Once the wastewater has been through its traditional treatment, it undergoes ultrafiltration, passing through a membrane that removes all organics larger than 1/100th of a micron. Secondly, the water is treated via reverse osmosis, which removes all viruses and pharmaceuticals. Lastly, the purified water goes through a strenuous disinfection process. The result, Riley says, is a cleaner and better tasting water than comes from San Angelo's lakes. Local officials would be gathering data for up to 9 months. Samples are being taken all along the process several times daily for testing locally and in specialized laboratories. Riley says the process is proven. He notes that cities as near as Abilene and Big Spring, and as far as Singapore and drought-stricken California, have successfully launched reuse projects. While some communities pump the water back into reservoirs, Riley said that degrades the quality of the treated water, involves extra expense in retreating it, and makes it subject to evaporation. It also forces a municipality to send some of its water downstream to other water rights holders.
The idea of direct potable reuse is new, primarily because it's just not something people wanted to think about. But the fact of the matter is that we're taking pristine water and putting it back into a lake or a stream, and there's not a lot of reason to do that because the technology is there to make it absolutely safe.
Riley's advocated for diversifying San Angelo's water supply so it's not dependent upon rainfall. He has also said time is of the essence. San Angelo's lakes hold less than 2 years of supply, and forecasts are predicting a hot, dry summer. Direct potable reuse, he said, could be the drought-resistant water supply San Angelo has been seeking.
It's clearly going to play a big role in the future of water supply, especially in areas where there's not a lot of water.
For SATV, I'm Anthony Wilson.
Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with our city manager, Daniel Valenzuela. We're talking about the city council's priorities. Number 3 on that list, moved up this year from number 5, is a new police station. Talk a little bit about what you anticipate happening on the front of getting a new police headquarters for the SAPD.
No, we do know that the current headquarters is out of date. There's a lot of issues, major issues with that facility. So we do know moving forward, again, as you mentioned, the city council actually was number 5 on the priority level. They did move it up to number 3. We would like to see that happen. We know that moving forward, that it is an item that will be going to the voters under a bond election to determine specifically the project itself. We'll be presenting the cost for the project. And right now, the chief of police is looking at that cost. We are looking at that study to determine what are the needs of the police department. We definitely want to make sure that we're as responsible as we possibly can with the cost, and I know the chief does understand that, but again, it is something that is important, something that, quite frankly, at this point, we have a location that we feel perhaps it could go into, and at this point, it's just determining if the voters will pass it through, and I think that everywhere that I go to do a presentation, that's always a question that I'm asked: when do we get a new police station? This will be their opportunity to vote on that, and speak up on that, and determine whether that's something that they consider a priority as well.
You know, it's very unusual for the city to have a bond election. In the 11 years that I've lived here, I don't ever recall the city calling a bond election. Why aren't we going sort of that route with this particular project?
You know, the cost, and we've heard we've heard varying differences as far as the cost itself, anywhere from $24 million. I've heard some people say it's going to be about $40 million project. It won't be. I don't foresee it being that costly of a project for us. But again, as I mentioned a while ago, the city council does prioritize the projects that we'll be working on. As we've been talking about, water and streets are the top priority, and we have a capacity to handle that within our debt. The citizens, though, when we start looking at other projects, the police station, that is perhaps a project that we'd have to be looking at property taxes. There may be an adjustment on that if, in fact, that does go through. How much of an impact will be related to the citizens before they actually take a look at that and vote on that as well. But again, we just want to make sure that we lay out the factuals on it, and the citizens, so they have a true understanding of what the cost truly will be for them as well. But at this point, the bond election will give us a better indication of what the citizens feel about perhaps an increase actually in the property taxes.
So, of course, the devil will be in the detail, but it seems like you get the sense that people are generally supportive of a new station for the police department.
They are, as I mentioned a while ago. That has been, I've yet to hear really anyone say that I oppose it. The only thing that they oppose or that they have a concern about is the cost, and that's what needs to be determined at this point.
You know, the slowing of the oil economy has resulted in a decrease in sales tax collections, which help to support city services and fund the city budget. How is the organization responding to that decrease in sales tax collections?
You know, we've been monitoring sales taxes. We knew that those numbers had started going down. We've seen a decline in our sister cities as well, in Odessa and Midland. Not so much in Abilene, but Odessa and Midland are deeply impacted because they are so dependent on that economy. What we've done, of course, is we've monitored sales tax revenues. We know that our projections for revenues were a little bit higher. Those revenues are going to be going down as the actuals do come in. So, of course, to do it responsibly, once you see the revenues go down, if we had we had revenues here and expenses right here. If revenues are going down, absolutely we'll be cutting back our expenditures. And we're looking at different areas at this point, which we presented to City Council. Well, we do want to cut back on those expenditures. A lot of times we do have positions that can't be filled for one reason or another. So we do have some monies that are left over that year. Instead of capturing at the end of the year that goes into our fund balance, we'll actually be using that to reduce our expenditures and stay within budget.
And so people probably don't realize, but payroll is far and away the largest expense that the city has.
It really is, you know. So again, in the past we've struggled hiring positions, especially when oil and gas was doing really well. We had a lot of those vacancies that were available to us. Not so much now, but we still have those vacancies. And typically at the end of any given year, the city actually does have savings in those expenditures that goes into fund balance. So this year will be a different story. We'll probably have very little that goes back into the fund balance, but at the very least, we will balance our budget.
So moving forward this summer, of course, you'll be going through the budget process for fiscal year 2017. What does a return to a quote-unquote normal economy portend for the city budget?
You know, I think that we had been riding this wave. You know, the sales tax revenues were coming in at record highs. We now know that that's stabilized. So moving forward, you know, we'll be looking at services. We definitely do not want to cut back services. We want to maintain a good level of service to our citizens. They deserve that. But we also know that we're not going to be projecting as high as we did this past year, which I thought we did it very conservatively as well. But those numbers really did go down. All that means for us is taking a look at areas where we want to make sure we provide service, again, at the level that we've been providing, or even find a way to improve upon it, but find other areas where we can reduce our expenditures.
You know, we just recently had one of our sessions of COSA University here, our Citizen Academy, and our budget manager presented about city finances. I think people were really surprised to learn that fully 50% of the general fund budget of the city goes to our police and our fire services. And, you know, outside of that, it's kind of hard to cut something to reduce the expenditures in a really substantial manner.
It really is. You know, I think a lot of times we hear, you know, I hear citizens sometimes tell me, well, we pay our property taxes. We want this, this, and this. You know, they want increased services. And there's a cost associated with it. A lot of times what citizens really don't realize is the property taxes really does go to pay for, to cover police and fire. And above and beyond that, we have other tax or other monies that do come in through sales tax revenues. But mainly, yeah, that's a big chunk of our money. And we have to make sure that I keep talking about responsibility fiscally. It really is monitoring exactly those monies that are coming in and distributing those toward the services that are core services for the city.
Besides those three priorities that we've talked about, what more did the City Council tell you that it wishes to accomplish in the coming year?
You know, I think that as we look at our strategic planning workshops, our priority setting workshops, which is really what this is, and it gives us a really good understanding. We start talking about those top 5 areas. Those top 5 areas are big for us: streets, water, now the police station, of course, salaries. There have been some adjustments there to get us just a little bit closer to our sister cities. Where at one point we're at 80% of market value, but other cities are paying their communities. And of course, at this point, as far as the planning services or development services, are doing so much better. But when you look at those top 5 priorities, those are very consuming as far as the resources of the city. I think that the City Council at this last workshop that we had, they expressed keeping it focused on those top 5 and maintaining that focus, making sure that moving forward we accomplish those. And I think that we've made a great bounce moving forward to make that happen. You know, it's specifically in 3 different areas at this point that we've really tackled and addressed. So again, I think that the message from the City Council is to remain focused. Remain focused in that area, to make that your guiding principle moving forward in the future, to make sure that we're addressing those top priorities.
And like you said, that must really help from a management standpoint, maintaining that focus on those clear priorities.
It really does. You know, again, that's why these planning workshops are so important to us. We want that direction from the City Council. Once they establish the direction, what they want to see us accomplish in the future, it's up to us as staff to formulate those strategies, you know, the action steps moving forward, establishing those goals, and making sure that everything that we're working toward meets up with the directive given to us by the City Council, those priorities set by the City Council.
On May 7th, voters are going to be electing 3 new members to our City Council. Those are in Districts 1, 3, and 5. And the winners are going to serve 3 years. And subsequent to that, the winners of every other City Council election will be serving 4 years. And of course, for a long time, they've been serving only 2-year terms. How do you think longer City Council terms are going to impact the the management of the city of San Angelo?
You know, we, as far as the management, we're going to work with whomever comes in as far as the city council members. I think what this affords us, though, is when you have council members that are running and they're here for a 4-year term, I think typically for a new council member coming in, it takes a little while, you know, to really garner the knowledge necessary to make some really, really tough and good decisions on that city council. I think that stretching it out to 4 years affords council members a little bit more experience, you know. Toward the second and third and fourth year, they're really making some very well-informed decisions. Not to say they're not doing it the first year, because we work very closely with those new elected officials. But again, over a 4-year period, you gain more knowledge, more experience, rather than doing 2 years and then you're gone. To have a council member for 4 years, I think will be a great benefit to the city.
And of course, with an organization of this size, I assume that continuity is vital.
It really is. It really is. You know, we've I couldn't tell you enough how much of a change there is whenever you have 2 or 3, or in my case, when I first got here, there's 4 new council members that came in after 6 months upon my arrival. So it does shake things up quite a bit, you know, and which is not bad at times. We want to make sure that sometimes the shakeup is really good because it helps you to really refocus. But again, continuity is very important, Anthony, as you mentioned.
A couple of years ago, you sort of led us directors in crafting a new vision statement for the city of San Angelo, and that vision statement reads to be the Texas standard for opportunity, prosperity, and quality of life. And as we were crafting that, I remember you telling us that we needed the vision statement to be bold. It needed to express boldness. So in this coming year, how do you expect that boldness to sort of manifest itself?
You know, I think that boldness, when you look at some of the challenges that we're faced with here in San Angelo, it'd be really easy to shy away and say, well, in streets, $80 million, that's a lot of money. Let's not do that right now. Water, you know, we're looking at another $135 million. Let's not do that. It's not saying that we need to go willy-nilly with our spending. We need to do it in a very responsible manner, but it means tackling the issues that are before us, not ignoring them and saying, you know what, we're going to leave that to the next administration. We're going to leave that to the next council that comes in. It's rather taking a look at it and saying, you know what, these are these are very tough issues. I mean, you know, with tough issues, there's always a lot of negativity from some members of the community that feel we should be going in a different direction. But we listen to the citizens. We don't make decisions in a vacuum. We do go out there. We have public meetings. We do everything we possibly can to garner some of their opinions and so forth. But really, when you look at moving forward boldness, it's tackling the tough issues, regardless of how tough that's going to be on you moving forward with the concerns or the complaints that may come forward from those decisions. Again, our goal is to do the best we possibly can for the overall of the community. And it's not to shy away from the major issues.
We only have about a minute left. Do you still enjoy being city manager?
You know, it's a blessing. It's got its moments. You know, it's tough, and I always knew coming into this position that we would have those days. You know, but I feel very blessed. I feel God has blessed me in this position, and I do feel a responsibility. It's a beautiful responsibility because you get to make decisions that affect people's lives, and I take that very, very seriously. So again, for me, I'm enjoying it, and I'll continue enjoying it.
We've been talking with our city manager, Daniel Valenzuela, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode of The City.